welcome back to Darvanalee Designs Studio. For those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reed, and this is my channel all about sewing and crafts. I am a multi-craft channel, so if you're new here and that's something that you like, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and also don't forget to give this video a like as well. Now, most of the information or actually all of the information you need about today's project, which is a grime guard, will be listed down below. And so we're going to get straight into that. As I said, we are making a grime guard today, and for those that don't know what a grime guard is, it is a circular piece of fabric with elastic in it, so it's stretchy, okay, to go around either your hoops or your Q-snap. So this one here is a 10-inch hoop, and I've got an 8-inch grime guard on it. So I'm going to give you the formula that you need to make any size that you've got. So I need a grime guard, so I thought it was a perfect opportunity to show you how I make them. So these are also the ones that I sell in my store as well. So you can see they come off quite easily. So I'll move that hoop out of the way. I don't generally use Q-snaps. I either use scroll bars or I use hoops in my Dubco frame. So you can see here that we have no raw edges. Everything is finished off, and the one raw edge that we do have where there's a join, it is actually been zigzagged to stop it from fraying. So this has been used several times, and you can see it doesn't fray at all. I also put a label in mine as well, so I'm going to show you how I make them. Now you can just use a serger and serge the edges and then roll it over, but I don't like that finish, so I'm actually showing you a more professional way to have a finish, mostly for sale. But you can also make it for yourself, and it just stops all that thread getting in the way. And they're super easy to get onto hoops and to Q-snaps. They go on pretty much the same way. You've already got your fabric in there, and then you just basically put that over, and what that does is it holds your excess fabric as well as keeping the dirt from your fingers off your work. All right, so I'm going to set that aside, and we are going to make one today. So you are going to need a couple of things. You're going to need some 1/4-inch elastic. That's what I like to use. I have made them with thicker elastic, and I just find it a little bit cumbersome to do that. So 1/4-inch is the best one to go with, and you're going to need 2 pieces of that. You're also going to need some fabric, and you're going to need to cut this strip of fabric 6.5 inches wide. Okay, now I'm making quite a large grime guard today for my Q-snap. So basically I've got 2 strips there, and you'll just need to work out how many strips you're going to need. For an 8-inch one, you only need 1 strip of fabric as the width of the fabric, and I use quilter's cotton because it's readily available for me, having a quilting shop, so it is readily available to me, and that's what I use. You're also going to need a label if you're making them for sale, and I show you how to put them in. You're going to need a couple of pins, not too many. Most of this is done without pinning. You're also going to need some matching thread, and you're going to need a couple of presser feet. So I actually, when I make them, I've got a couple of feet that I use. Okay, so you're going to need a couple of feet. Now I use 3 feet when I'm doing it. Okay, so I've got 2 different types of 1/4-inch feet. Okay, and the reason that, and I'll show you how I use them, you don't need this many feet. I just make it as painless as possible for myself by using different things. Okay, so we're going to need our regular foot that comes with your sewing machine because we're going to do zigzag, so we need that to have that larger hole. Now these both here are 1/4-inch feet, so you can use either one. Now I use this one for my first turnover, and then I use this one when I do the second turnover to get rid of the raw edges, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But if you've only got this one here, we can do it all with that as well, and I'll show you the tips and tricks for doing that. I just have these feet, so I've just basically got into the habit. I do a little bit of like production line, so I'll have, you know, maybe 15 of these cut up, so I will do all the joining first, and they might all be in 8-inch So I'll do all the joining first and all the zigzagging that needs to be done. Then I will do the 15 of them, and then I will get the next foot, put that on and do all the first roll over on both sides, and then I'll do the finishing part with this foot. But I will show you all that I'm going to do with everything there with that. All right, so once you've got all those, that is pretty much all you're going to need. You're also going to need a working sewing machine, and you're going to need your iron and ironing pad, although it is not actually necessary if you don't want to pull that out. Okay, so once you've got all your supplies, just set the elastic aside for one moment, set up your sewing machine, and we're going to talk about sizing. So as I said, I have this 8-inch one. So if you're using a small Q-snap or a 10-inch hoop, because that's what it fits on, okay, if you were using this on an 8-inch hoop, you'd need to make it a little bit smaller. You'd probably need to make it about a 6-inch. But the formula that you need to use, and we're going to refer to the Q-snap so you know what I'm talking about, we need to find what our measurements are. Okay, so for the instance, today's tutorial, I'm going to be making one for this 17 by 11 inch Q-snap. So how I find out what the size fabric I need to cut, or the strips that I need to cut and join, is I take the long measurement and the short measurement. So we've got 17 by 11. I add them together, okay, and that gives me 28. Okay, 28 inches, and then I times it by 2, so that's going to give me 56 inches. So basically what you're doing is you are just basically finding each side of this. Now if this was an 8-inch one or a 10-inch one or anything like that and it was square, you would just basically take your one measurement, whether it be the top or the side, and you times it by 4 because you've got 4 sides. Okay, once you've found out that size, so for me I need to have a strip, I've got 56 for my measurement. The next thing I need to do is add 2 inches on. Now this gives you a little bit of extra room for sewing the strips together, and then just a little bit more room for stretch and everything like that. I'm a little bit tripped up on words today, so I do apologize. I've got a lot going on in my mind today. So basically that's all you're going to do is you're going to find what your measurement is. So if you're looking for a square one, you only have to measure one side because all sides are equal on a square. But for rectangles, you've got to take your long and your short edge and then times that by 2 and then add 2 inches onto that. All right, so as I said, I am making it for this one. So I have 17 by 11, and that is 28. Then I times that by 2, gives me a measurement of 56, and then I add another 2 inches onto that. So I have to have a measurement of 58 in my strips. So the width of a fabric is only 44 inches, so I had to cut 2 strips. I cut my strips, as I said, the width of the fabric. I've removed my selfish off this, and so now I'm going to join these together, these 2 strips, and they are 6.5 inches wide. Now the reason I used to make them only 6 inches wide, but they didn't give you much room to put your fabric in or anything like that, so I've readjusted my measurements to 6.5. That gives me enough then to come in for my casing for my elastic, and yeah, and we can got the stretch, and we've got enough room to put our fabric in if we've got excess fabric on our project. All right, so basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your strip. As I said, I've cut this the width of the fabric, and then what you're going to do is you are going to pull your 2 strips together, right sides together, and we are going to pin this together so they don't move on us to make sure our raw edges are staying together. And I like to put about 3 pins in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to head to the sewing machine, and we are going to just put our regular foot on for this one, and we're going to stitch along here, doing a back stitch at the beginning of the end, and then we're going to do a zigzag to conceal that in, and then that way it's not going to come undone. Now if you are making a smaller grime guard, so like the 8-inch one, you're only going to be working with one strip, and basically what you're going to do is you're just going to bring those ends around and join them together. So you do exactly the same thing. Okay, we want to make sure that we have a sealed end. Okay, now when you're working with 2 strips, you're obviously going to have 2 joins. So once we have joined this together and I've zigzagged it, I will come back here, I will press that zigzag down so it's laying flat, and then what I do is that sealed edge, I will measure the size that I need. Okay, so let's head over to the sewing machine and stitch that down. Okay, so as I said, we want to have our all-purpose foot, and basically we've set up our machine. I'm using a white thread today, and what we're going to do is we are just going to stitch that down. So I just turn my machine on and it goes to a default setting, which is about 2.5, and that's all I'm going to work with. Okay, and then I'm just going to pop that underneath, bring my presser foot down, and I'll just grab my pen so I can point to where I'm going. But you can see here that my fabric is on the edge of this foot, okay, which works out to be about 1/4 inch where it is. So you can see here I've got a 1/4 inch mark. So that is about the size that we want it. If you want to make it a little bit bigger, don't get too carried away, because we do need it to be to be on the smaller side. You don't want to take away from the amount that you need. All right, I always start with the needle in the down position, and then I'm just going to take out that first pin, because my needle's now holding that in place, and then I'm just going to start stitching, and then I'll do a back stitch, and then I'm just going to go all the way down, taking my pins out as I go. And when I get to the end, I'll just do a back stitch. Okay, needle up. And we can take that out. Grab our thread snips. And next what we're going to do is we are going to set our machine on a zigzag. Alright, so I again will put my fabric underneath, lining up on with the presser foot again, and then I'm going to change it to my machine to a zigzag, and then I'm just going to bring it down a touch. I don't want a real big zigzag. Okay, so I'll just fiddle around with this, and I'm just going to hold that there. It's not quite all the way to the edge of the foot, it's just in a smidgen, and what that's going to do is that is going to stitch along the stitch that I've already done and then go off the edge. So what we're doing is encasing that edge, and you may have to play around a little bit. So you may have to play around with your placement, so you may have to move it a little bit this way just so the needle goes off the edge of the fabric, and that's going to put the stitch off the edge as well, and it's going to encase it. So alright, so let's stitch away and see how we go. So you may have to move it, and I'm not sure if you can see I've come in a little bit further because my stitch wasn't quite going off. So it is a little bit of playing around. You can get a scrap piece of fabric and test it first. But I sort of tested in that first little bit because that first little bit is actually going to get rolled under and I don't have to worry about it. Alright, so I'm going to lift up my presser foot and I'm going to just flip my piece over. So this is how it was in the sewing machine. I've pulled the length of that stitch and I'm just going to flip that over, and lining up where I was again, I am going to zigzag down all the way again. Okay, we're at the end. We can lift our presser foot up, get rid of all our long threads. Okay, so you can see here that we have stitched that down. I'm just going to get rid of any of those scraggly threads out of the way. And you can see there that that is now all encased in. So you can go along and get rid of any threads that have come off the fabric or anything like that. I try not to handle my fabric too much until I get to this stage. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is I need to make a measurement of 29 inches because I have got 2 strips here, okay, which would measure close to 80 inches. I don't need all that fabric. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that edge that I've stitched and I'm going to place that up against my mat. Okay, so you can see there I'm lining up right on the edge there. Okay, so for me, I need to make sure that my measurement is 29 inches. Okay, so I'm going to have to do that off camera because I can't get everything in the shot. Okay, but what I do is I line it up on this edge and then I make sure it's nice and flat, and then I measure on my mat 29 inches. So I make sure that everything is lining up, all my raw edges and everything like that, so it's nice and straight, and I just line it up on the edge of my mat, and then I find the 29 inch mark, okay, because I've got 2 strips here. That will give me a measurement of 58. Then I'll just grab my ruler and I will go to the 29 inch mark on my mat, and I'll just cut that off. Okay, so I'm going to be left with a couple of strips, and I can just set that aside and make myself a scrappy one later on. It's great for using up your scraps and all that sort of stuff. All right, so the next thing I need to do is bring this back up. So you can see here, now I've got a shorter piece. So I've still got this open bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my pieces again, and then I'm just going to pin it, and I'm going to do exactly what I just did with the other side. I'm going to stitch down first, and then I'm going to zigzag it. You can, if you've got a serger, you can do that. All right, so I'm going to change it back to a straight stitch, and then I'm just going to stitch, do a back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then stitch down. Okay, so now what we have is a nice little circle of fabric. So mine's quite large, so as you can see. What I like to do at this stage is I just like to give these seams a little bit of a press. You can just finger press them, but as I said, most of my stitching is done in production line. So I have tons of stuff cut, and then I just sit there and I sew. So you can just finger press like that. You can see there that it's just sitting nice and flat. But I do like to give it a bit of a press with my iron and ironing pad. Takes 2 seconds. And I just make sure that that seam is sitting nice and flat, because it's very important that you do have it sitting flat for when we're putting our elastic in. So it doesn't get caught up. Okay, that's it. So you can see there it's sitting nice and flat, and there's no raw edge exposed because it's all zigzagged, and it's not going to fray on me when I'm using it. All right, so set that out of the way. That's pretty much all we need now. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that our right sides are facing together, and we are going to get rid of this raw edge here. Now this is where one of these presser feet come in real handy. This is a 1/4 inch foot. As you can see, it's got a metal guide off it. I think this one was originally off my Janome, but it fits my Singer as well. So basically what happens is the fabric butts up against that edge of the presser foot, that dark edge, okay, and I just fold it over just enough so the edge of the fabric isn't coming past this toe of the foot. All right, and once we get to the sewing machine, I will show you a little bit clearer. You should be able to see that. So basically all it's going to do is we're just going to roll this fabric over, and you don't need to pin it or anything like that. It is all just done nice and slowly with the needle in the down position. You can stop, you can roll it, and all the rest of it. So we're going to bring it down. It's just on it's about a scant 1/4 inch that we're going to bring it down, and we're going to stitch that all the way around on both sides. So it's really good to use these sort of presser feet with the guide on it, because it just makes it so much easier. Now, if you don't have one of those, that's fine. You're just going to roll the fabric over, and you're going to keep the fabric on the edge of this toe just here, and you don't want your fold over to be any bigger than this toe here, okay? And that's going to give you a nice 1/4 inch turnover. Alright, so we'll get rid of those pins out of the way and we're going to head to the sewing machine. We're going to change presser feet. Okay, we don't need this one anymore for now. We'll pop our presser foot on. And you can see there that that guide's just sitting nicely right where it needs to. It's not wobbling or anything like that, and our fabric will butt right up to it. And you can see that that is lining up with my 1/4 inch mark on my sewing machine. So I've got a little indentation here, and there's also a mark here that lines up. And I know that the 1/4 inch is, I'll just take that off again and I'll show you. That 1/4 inch lines up with that edge of my feed dog, so it's just on it or just past it, but yeah, it lines up there. So basically what I do is I start where my seam is and I just roll it over just a touch, okay, and then I will put that underneath the presser foot, okay, just holding it in place, and I just put the fold of the fabric against this mark here. On our little guide that we've got there. So I don't want the fabric to come underneath that. I want it to stay butting up against it but not going past, and that's going to give us a nice little turnover, and it's not going to be too thick or anything like that. So at this stage I like to put my needle in the down position. Make sure you take it out of zigzag, because if you zigzag you are going to smash a needle. So make sure you double check that it is out of the zigzag and just onto straight stitch. Okay, again I am just using a straight stitch. It's just about a 2.5, I think it's 2.5 my default is on this one. It's hard to tell because it's not computerized. And then all I'm going to do, I'm not even going to back stitch, I'm just going to stitch along and making sure that that fabric is not going past. And you can see like it just, you're holding it and you're just going to roll it over with your finger, and I'm just making sure that it's a nice small stitch along there. And I'm basically what I'm doing, and I'm not sure you can really see that on camera, my needle is just catching the fabric just here, okay, right near this edge. And you might have to make your rollover a little bit bigger depending on your presser foot, because not all presser feet are equal. And you're just going to stitch along, and you're going to go all the way around to where you started. Needle up, and we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. Okay, so you can see here that I've just stitched that down, okay, and now we need to repeat that to the other raw edge. So flipping it over, you're going to start where you have got a seam, and you can see here that my seam is going this way, so I want to make sure that this is not twisted. Okay, so I want to make sure that this seam is going in the same direction, and when you get around to your other seam as you're sewing, make sure that you're not twisting it like this. Okay, you want that seam to sit nice and flat. Again, we're just going to roll that down a little bit to start with, and then we're going to slide that underneath our presser foot, making sure that our seam is going the right way. So I can see here on this piece over here, the seam is going this way, so I want to make sure that up here the seam is going in the same direction. Again, we're going to put the needle in the down position. So we have just pulled that out of the machine and we're just going to snip our threads off. The next thing that we're going to do is we're pretty much going to do exactly the same thing, only this time we are going to roll it over so we've got enough room to put our 1/4 inch elastic in. Okay, so basically what I do with this one, again, I use my presser foot. Okay, so this is where I swap either back to, you can swap back to your all-purpose foot, or you can swap to this 1/4 inch foot. But you want a foot that is a little bit wider and doesn't have a guide on it. It just makes it super easy. All right, so I'm going to pop this back onto our machine. I'm going to use that 1/4 inch foot. So as I said, now what we want to do is we want to roll this over again, but we want to make it a little bit wider. Okay, so we can fit our elastic in there. So I know that it has to come over by at least 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and using the side of my presser foot, that gives me that. Alternatively, some machines actually have these markings, so you can see all these numbers here. You can see there's a 3/8 mark there. Okay, so that's where I want the fold of my fabric to be. Okay, and the edge of the fabric is going to be underneath the presser foot, and it's going to make it super easy. Now I know with my particular machine that I can use the edge of my presser foot, and that's going to make it super easy, so that's what I generally do. All right, and again I just find my seams, and that's where I start, and I roll it over like we did last time. So effectively what that is doing is it is actually just encasing all of my raw edges now, and it gives me a nice finish. So you can see here I've rolled it over and I'm just running the edge of the fabric, okay, just near my, it's a little bit on the chubby side of a rollover. So I'm just going to start a little away from the seam, okay, and I'm going to pop that under the presser foot, and then I'm just going to put the presser foot down. So I'm just trying to get that to roll a little bit. It's being difficult today. Okay, so you can see there I've got the fabric under the presser foot, and when I put the presser foot down it goes to the 3/8, and that's where I'm going to stitch it. Okay, and then I'm going to put the needle in the down position, and that is what I'm going to do. So basically all I do is just run my fingers along that fold and I gently roll it down. Now let's take a closer look at where everything is sitting. So you can see here my edge of my fabric is sitting at the 3/8, or just past my presser foot. Okay, and I've got this little toe here, which it looks like about 1/8 of an inch. I've got the edge of the fabric running along there. Okay, now that there is a little bit too big for me, so I'm going to bring this edge of the fabric closer in. Okay, so again I will take the needle out of the down position, lift that up, and just bring that edge that we sewed before under a little bit, and just narrow down that seam. Then I'm going to put the presser foot down, and that is just a touch smaller now. Okay, and basically what's going to happen is I'm going to stitch, and it's going to be about 1/8 of an inch away from here. Okay, so we are going to be now stitching. So what you're going to do is you're going to do 1 or 2 stitches, and then you're going to do a back stitch. Okay, this is the time when I like to put my label in. So once I've made that back stitch, I then will slide my label up under. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue stitching. And when we get around back to where we started, so that's that seam where we started, we're going to stop about 1 inch away from that, and we're going to leave 1 inch opening, and that's going to give us plenty of room to insert our elastic in. we've done that. Now what we're going to do is just trim that thread away, and then we're going to flip around and we're going to do the other side. Okay, again, we're just going to start. This time we're obviously not putting in a label, so we don't have to worry about that this time. And as you can see, I sort of just give it a little bit of a pull down this end here. Okay, and you can see that it just starts to roll over and it sits nice and flat, and that's why I don't worry about pins. So you've got one hand sitting here and then your other hand is down here at the bottom, and you're just sort of pulling. Okay, not too tight, just a gentle tug, and it'll just roll over for you. So we're going to start that, and a back stitch again, and we're just going to do exactly the same thing. So we are now back to the beginning. We've got our openings, and next what we're going to do is get rid of all our threads that are going to be in our way. Okay, and you can see there that we've got a nice clean edge. It's not raw in any way, so we're not going to have any thread fraying or anything like that. And we've got an opening here, so we've got one opening at one side, and then I've got an opening down near my label. I sometimes do that. I do it at opposite sides, so we don't have everything sort of in one spot happening, because as you know, sometimes we don't get the best back stitch finish. Okay, so the next step that we're working on is threading our elastic in. So you need 2 safety pins, and you're going to put one safety pin at one end. Then you're going to get your elastic to the other end and the other one, and pop that in. Okay, so you've essentially got a piece of elastic with 2 safety pins on it. And then you're going to find your opening, and you are going to basically just thread it in. And then you just keep going all the way around. Okay, so we have now threaded that through, and then you just tug it, and you've got this other end, and you want to bring that through. So you just want to keep threading that through until the pins are sort of close to each other. Okay. Alright, so I just sort of play around with it until they come close. Okay, what I do now is I take the safety pins out. Okay. And not pulling on it too tight. What I do is I make sure that they're laying flat, and I'm just going to put that like that, and then I'll grab a pin and just place a pin into it just like that. And then I know I can just sort of let it go, and it's not gonna, I'm not going to play around with it too much until I'm ready to sew it. Okay, and that's just gonna, and then I'll just pin that into place on my little grime guard, and that's, I know it's not going to go anywhere. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread it through the other side, and I'll find my other opening, which is here, and then I'm going to repeat exactly the same thing. So our elastic, grab our safety pins, put one in each end, and then thread it through. So as long as you've got a couple of inches out of the one side, it doesn't matter how long this one is, but you can take off your pins. And then we'll just put our pin in. And hold that in place. All right, so I'm just going to move this around so I've got a little bit more room to work with. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to head over to the sewing machine, and what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out a little bit further. So once you've pulled that out a little bit further, we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're just going to stitch across a couple of times. I generally start on this side, stitch for 3 stitches, back stitch, and do that a couple of times until I can pull on it and I can see that it's not going to give me any grief. Okay, so you can take the pin out at this stage. You want it to be around about 1 inch over the top. So you can see there that I've got the inch on each side, and I'm just going to lay them on top of one another. I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to just lay that underneath, and I put that under the presser foot, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch that into place, and then I'll press my back stitch, and then I'll come across again, back stitch again, and then one last time. Okay, take that out from underneath the presser foot. Okay, and you can see there that I've got a really good strong seam. Sorry about all the noise in the background, but my husband's living with me and she gets very excited. And then I just snip off that excess until it's about 1/4 inch away and get rid of my threads. Now you don't want to rush this stage, you just want to take your time, because what will happen is you will get little bird's nests underneath with your elastic, and that won't give you a really good strength in the... See, I can pull on that and it's not going to give. And now what I can do is I'll just do the other side, and then I will basically it's done, and then I just got to close up the holes where the elastic's gone in. So I can take that out, and again we're just going to overlap that by about 1 inch. Okay, just like so, and then we'll pop that under the presser foot, trim off our overlap, get rid of our excess threads. Okay, and now we can pull that in on both sides. So we can stretch that out. Okay. And then you just sort of even it up. Okay, so you can see there that it's all pulling together. Okay, so it's pulled in, and this is where I sort of go along and get rid of any scraggly threads that are going to be problematic while I'm using it. Find my opening, so you can see here we've still got that opening. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the sewing machine, we're going to stretch that out, and we're going to stitch that down. So to stitch that down, we've got to find where we finished and where we started, and that's where we're going to start about 1/4 inch away from exactly where you finished. Okay, and then you're going to stitch about 1/4 inch over, and you're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and that's just going to close that up, and you're not going to have any problems. Now if you you are working away and you've been using this and it basically the elastic gives or breaks, or something's happened, you've stretched it too far and it's just not getting, it's not sitting nicely around, you can actually just unpick this spot here and get that elastic out. So you can open it up, find the elastic, pull it out, cut it, get it out of there, and rethread it again. You know, these don't wear out. The only thing that will give is the elastic, and that's after many years of use. You know, you can wash them and everything like that. I dry them just as they are. I just put them on an indoor rack. I don't put them out in the sun because, I mean, we're only using quilted cotton, and you don't want to fade it, or, and especially in the Queensland sun, everything just doesn't last. All right, so once you've done that, you're going to, as I said, head back over to the sewing machine, find your opening, start about a 1/4 inch away from where you finished, put your needle in the down position, give it a little bit of stretch so you've got a flat area to work on, as you can see here. Okay, and then all I do is start with my back stitch. Mine's an automatic one. You might have to do a couple of stitches, and then I'm just going to stitch that closed. Okay, making sure that my opening is completely closed, and when I get back to where I started, I just go about 1/4 inch, maybe 3 or 4 stitches, and then do a back stitch. And then that side's closed, and I'm going to repeat that for exactly the same thing for the other side. Okay, so we have now got all our openings closed. Our elastic is in there. We're going to get rid of all our little threads, and we're going to pop this onto our Q-snap. Now, this is where you want to even it out. I open it like this and stretch it as far as I can and sort of roll it, do like a roll with my hands around it, and that gets the elastic sitting there nice and even. So this is the 8-inch one, okay, so you can see it's a little bit smaller, and all I do is I stretch it like so, and then I just roll it, and as I do, you can see that the elastic will even out, okay, and then you've got it. And I do the same thing with the larger ones as well. Okay, there we go. That's all in there. You can see we've got everything is neat and tidy. We've got no raw edges. We've got no openings. We've got our little label in there. Our seams are all zigzagged and laying flat, same as this one over here. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my Q-snap and pop it on. So all you do is, starting up in one corner, go to the next corner, and you bring it down here, and then over to this one, and you can see that that's going to sit there. I can still do all my working without it being in the way, and I can also, you can see here I've got my fabric, I can just pop that off to the side and hook that up in there down the bottom, and then that is going to hold it all into place. Okay, and that's how I make my Q-snaps, and that's exactly how I make them for the ones that I sell as well. And if you're not a sewer and you've happened to come across this and want to give it a go, don't forget to tag me over on Instagram, and that way I can see how you went and tell me all about it. If you like this video today, don't forget to give us a thumbs up down below, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon beside it, and then that way you won't miss out on any future posts. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do hope that you enjoyed making your new Q-snap grime guard, or your hoop. That's a big hoop if you're making one this size, but as you've seen, they do fit on the hoops as well. All right, that's it for me today. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.